Hi there, whoever you are. This is my next talk, and in this talk is just really me summarizing various different points on the counterintuitive way to be more persuasive. You'll find this online if you go Google that, and that's what's there. And so go have a check it out. But basically, look, I'm going to go straight into it. So imagine if I could kind of say to you, and I say to you all that, here's a guy, here's Yoda, you know what he did. On times these Jedis, they used to have a Jedi mind trick, and they used to be able to convince people, bring people on a kind of journey. And that kind of a journey, they used to be able to wave their hand and then they basically do what they're going to do. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to give you exactly that, but I'm going to give you here today exactly summarize them in the talk that gives you some of that and actually brings people and influences them to go on the journey that you kind of wanted them to go on. So, look, this was basically all premised by our good friend Nero Sivanathan. Nero Sivanathan is the professor of organizational behavior in the London Business School, and he gave a TED talk some years ago, and I've been reviewing that and just reflecting on it really. Ultimately, organization psychology and organizational behavior has been a big thing for me. It was over all of the businesses that I had over the last number of years, and we managed over teams of over 160, 180 people. And at times I had to make arguments and debates of how I could bring people together, and also all of my leaders had to do the same thing as well. Now, the thing is, when you put up an argument, and I say argument in the kind of what I would call more of the dictionary kind of measure, dictatorial, the kind of dictionary kind of measure of basically bringing an argument and a debate that can bring people on a journey. And I suppose there are kind of strong arguments and weak arguments. And then you will get a weak argument if you add more weak argument to it and kind of weak information, weak detail, and if you stumble with regards to it, the kind of argument itself becomes unfounded. Or you will get somewhat a kind of very strong argument by being very concise and descriptive of what you're going to do. The best example of that I can give you is a gentleman who used to be the president of the United States, and he said that we're going to put a man in the moon by the end of the year, or not by the end of the year, by the end of the decade. That was in 1962, and in fairness to the Americans, they did exactly what was said on the 10. Now he could have went and he could have been talking about we're going to create a space program. Well, at the time, I'm not sure NASA was fully formed. We're going to get all the biggest brains and we're going to bring them to Houston. We're going to put some over in Florida and we're going to do that. No, he didn't. No, he did do a speech at the time, went on for 15 minutes, but his core message was one. It was clear and concise. Man on the moon by the end of the decade. And I guess that's the kind of point, and that's kind of where we're at. If we can short and concise, sometimes we can drive our argument home, and some of the best speeches do that. Or vice versa, by introducing lots of information and lots of weak argument, or not necessarily weak argument in the context of what you're trying to do, we could basically deflate that kind of argument. And I suppose I'm looking at you and you're kind of saying, well, Aiden, tell us why. Why did you hear about this and what's your understanding of it? Well, I'll tell you my understanding of it. Basically, as we elaborate through an argument, our brains come and look at it in a particular type of way. So our brains look at information. So we are a biological computer, and we look at two types of information. We look at diagnostic information, and then we look at non-diagnostic information. So diagnostic information is information that's relevant to that point at that particular time. And non-diagnostic information is kind of irrelevant. That's kind of an add-on. It's nice to know, maybe not nice to know, but it's there. And I guess it's added sometimes by the narrator to the particular argument. And what our brains do is something funny. What they do is they balance that information. What they don't do is summate it all and put it all and go, the more information, then the more information I have, the more better decision I'll make. Not necessarily. What you call it, sometimes the less information is better, in the sense of, well, you get the points and you start to elaborate and your brain starts to kind of bring itself on a kind of little journey. The more it gets, the more it dilutes the core message that you might be trying to pass on. So it's an interesting point to know. So how did Nero look at this? Well, what Nero did was he got a group of, and he asked his students at the time to investigate two students, or not necessarily two students, two imaginary students. There was John. John 1. He asked a particular question. He said, your question was, how well are these guys going to do in their exams in the future? And how, based on what they kind of study, etc. John 1, he studies 30 hours. And that was it. That's all he gave them. But he says, John 2, he studies 30 hours. He does a lot of cycling. He's a very keen cyclist. Loves food. He's a real foodie. He creates food. He's always online, kind of looking up different mirrors. And then also, basically, he has got a relationship, and he goes with his girlfriend in Scotland, in Edinburgh, every once or twice every month. The students reflected on this. and they had a great thought. He says, now answers the question. He says, which ones are going to do better than other? The vast majority of the students actually voted for the first guy. I'm just getting there. He voted for John 1. And they used to say why? Because the message was diluted with all the rest of the stuff that John 2 has. So it's a key point to remember. Sometimes less is more. So bringing that on to the point, how do we interact with this and how do we see this in the overall society today? Best example I can give you is something that basically Nero noted himself when he went off over to the United States. And he noticed there, he says that basically they have these things like, and I'm sure you're from a different part of the world than I am. We don't have pharmaceutical advertisements here, but we do have kind of what I call statements. But when you go to the United States, you know, you'll see the ad for the big, you know, medicine. And then afterwards, the FDA has required that all ads put in basically, you know, this kind of 30-second or 1 minute banner on the bottom, which is, you know, has all blah, 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 blah. It means the side effects. So he actually had a look at this and he did another students and he said that people noted that basically if they take, say, the green tablet, and if the green tablet harbors and all is very distinct and has all of the major and minor side effects, so, you know, creates heart attacks, strokes, fatigue, tiredness, longer hair, itchy toes, and basically sore limbs. Well, your brain is kind of going, okay, that's quite a bit, but what has happened there now is the major and minor effects have been just brought into one big sentence, and your brain has decided that, well, I didn't really hear stroke or heart attack, did I? And so therefore it must be okay. However, if I went out and we changed the ad and it said major side effects on this are actually stroke and heart attack, not a lot of people are going to be buying this drug. And because you're going to have that, and the average hasn't been diluted. So I'm not saying that the pharmaceutical industry has intentionally done it this way, but they have included major and minor side effects, and the effect of that has been that our brain has averaged out to be what I would call a less diluted kind of message. So basically then, if I was kind of summate on that, on why we need to kind of know these are the things, we need to know basically certain kind of things when we're on a journey or when we are being spoken to or when we are speaking to. So first thing I'd suggest to you is that you listen to actually what's being said. Hear what the diagnostic information is. Hear what the non-diagnostic information is. And then be cognizant enough to understand that your brain is averaging, but wait, listen, and then maybe make a more conscious decision. Also, when you're the other side of the table and you're actually giving, and you want people to come on a journey, remember less is more. Less is more in the sense of basically, you know, we don't want to over elaborate, just as I just done there. I should have just shut up. And to that point, I will. I'll be a little bit more Yoda-like, and here's the boss himself. And if you want to be a little bit more Yoda-like, take that and run with it. Finally, I'd say to you, head on over to TED Talks, look at the counterintuitive way to be more persuasive, have a look at Nero, and listen to his points. Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.